One of the big problems in putting is motion in the wrist joint. And we can have even slight amounts of motion in the wrist joint that can cause the putter to become misaligned during a stroke. This joints move in 3 dimensions, so there's really quite a range of motion there in the wrist joint. Now, professionals typically have a much more stable stroke where they're not having a lot of wrist motion during the stroke. These players do spend a lot of time with maintenance to try to keep those strokes stable and to prevent that motion, but they're still vulnerable under pressure to having a slight amount of motion come in and destroy the stroke. Now we have a lot of devices, modern devices available to measure precisely what is going on and where the motion is happening in the wrist. We also have high-speed cameras, and then we have other devices that will track the putter and find out whether your stroke is looping or going inside or problems there. So we have a lot of information about what's going on during the putting stroke, but the question is, what are you going to do about it? And how are you going to prevent that motion, those undesirable motions from happening? So you can spend a lot of time training with maintenance and drills and training aids to keep that stroke stable and reduce that wrist motion, but you're still going to be vulnerable in pressure situations to slight amounts of motion. And some of the devices, they'll use auditory feedback to make a noise to let you know when you're either in a good position or you've gone out of a good position. So you can have auditory feedback for what's going on in the stroke. And that's similar to the technique that they use with training lab rats to ring a bell and get a treat. So that's one method that you can use. Another method is to use physically limiting techniques to stabilize motion in the joints. And that's what the DynAlign technique is about. We physically limit the range of motion, degrees of freedom, in 12 of the 13 major joints, not just the wrist joint, because the motion in the shoulders, hips, ankles, elbows can also destroy your putting stroke. So DynAlign does that by using soft end range motion and opposing pressures to limit these degrees of freedom, and it results in a more stable stroke with less variation in your motion that can destroy the alignment. So it takes a lot less maintenance. So this is the DynAlign system uses pre-shot alignment rather than aiming a putter first and building a stance. And you'll notice when players do that, they're very careful about completing their stance. And to me, that's just evidence that their setup is fragile and vulnerable to motion. So we're using pre-shot motion and aim the putter as the final step. So I'm going to demonstrate that with this putter. I call this the acid test putter. It's fit for no one, has a number of bends in it, nothing's in alignment, but we use our pre-shot technique for stabilizing motion in the joints so that we can get a more stable arc putting stroke, and we can aim the putter as the final step rather than the first step in the pre-shot routine. And then during the stroke, instead of trying to guide the putter down a line or through a gate, we're confident in our start line that we're going to hit that. So we can really focus on our force application and distance control during the stroke, which simplifies things. So if you'd like to learn more about this, I have other videos on the Recast channel here. You can learn about DynAlign. I have Zoom lessons available through my website, DynAlignGolf.com. So good luck with your putting. Thanks for watching.